I'm here with David Pattinson of David Pattinson's American Future, and we're here to talk about the state of youth careers in the United States of America. David, thank you for joining today.
Thanks for having me.
So can you talk a little bit about your background, what got you started in DPAF, and why this is an issue that you've decided to take up?
Well, this is something I took up several years ago now. It was right at the time of the 2008 economic collapse. I'm from England originally, and I just moved to America the year before to build a career here in real estate. And everyone told me when I was at university, first of all, I was going to have no problem getting into a successful career. And second of all, that real estate in America was really the place to be to have a lot of success. And what I found was that everything I encountered was the exact opposite of what I was told. Real estate in the US was a total and complete disaster after the subprime mortgage meltdown, and getting a job after that as a young person was a near impossibility. So that's what got me interested in, why are young people not better prepared for careers, and how can we help them be better prepared, both as an individual and what does the American future need going forward? What kind of careers does the country need young people to train for and prepare for and do, rather than it just being this sort of randomized thing? Or as I met some guy in a bar and he told me like I should go and work for them, or my uncle told me this would be a good fit, and everything's just so sort of vague. So the career market for young people has improved somewhat since 2008, but it's still nowhere near where it needs to be for a successful economic future for America.
So you found a way to take a passion and channel it into trying to fix something that you identified as a societal ill at this point.
I identified it as a problem, and I wasn't the only one by any means, but I was a young person at the time, so I'd kind of gone through that difficulty of how it's so tough to build a successful career in the face of these economic headwinds, and how I think I could use my knowledge and experiences to help other young people move ahead in their careers.
So looking at the state of careers for young people, the statistics show that from about 2009 to now, unemployment went from about 10% to 5%, but there's a largely sense of not the opposite of optimism that pervades in public rhetoric. We have the 2016 election coming up, and that's been something that's been talked about a tremendous amount. What are your thoughts? What do you want to see some of these politicians, some of these candidates talking about, and what should we be hoping to be hearing from our candidates?
Well, I think the American economy is almost like a zombie economy these days. Economic growth has increased from what it was, but national debt has doubled. Student debt is out of control for young people. Underemployment is massive in America. Labor force participation rate is as low as it's been since the 1970s. Wage growth has been non-existent since sort of almost 2001. So there's a lot of fundamental and inbuilt problems for the average worker in the US economy and for the average young person trying to grow their career. And there's a big disconnect geographically. Some regions have decent growth. We're presently here in Washington, D.C., where there's been a good amount of growth, but other pockets of depressed areas in the United States make it very difficult for young people to get ahead. And it leads to bad externalities, crime, drugs, hopelessness, disillusionment, family, breakdown, people having kids much later or not at all, or get divorced, and all these sort of bad things. So we want to really make sure young people are being prepared properly within their education for careers. And if I was educating you, if I was your professor at university or your high school, I'd be asking you, Brian, how many employers have you met with this month? What interesting things have you learned about opportunities in this city we live in, about things you can do over the next 1 to 5 years to help grow your career, rather than it just be, have you turned in your homework assignment, or let me help you write your resume. These are sort of so non-dynamic type of things. We've really got to make sure that the integration between educators and employers is much more closely aligned, rather than these two really important stakeholders in career planning never communicating with each other.
Well, and you mentioned student debt. And nationally, statistics show that there's about $1.2 trillion in student debt, which is about an average of $35,000 per family. And those aren't just on students, those are on households. That puts a strain on the parents as well. What types of policy decisions do you think that we should be hoping to see to try to mitigate this issue that really it's crippling a lot of families and young professionals as they try and get their careers started?
Well, I think this whole student debt thing is totally out of control now. I mean, government has flooded the market with very sort of cheap, student loans, with the expectation that you as a young person, we can borrow all this money, feed it into the higher education system, and you'll get a job with high salaries after you come out of it. But what students find is they come out of university, they struggle to get a job, and their student loans are not tied to employment outcomes at all. They're just left with lots of debt, and they're struggling to pay it off for years and years and years. And so I think, the higher education industry has gotten incredibly greedy. It's gotten inflated. These government loans, student loans have inflated the problem. And now, US student loan debt is higher than the rest of the world combined. So, it's a massive, massive problem. And I hope this 2016 election raises this issue. And, we have, candidates with ideas to solve it. But there's also an abject panic in the marketplace with young people. They feel like unless they have an expensive education, they can't get a job. And so it's almost an inflationary situation through panic. Through the economic struggles that America's had, people are sort of more focused on taking on more debt to get a good education, to sort of dig themselves out of this hole, when I don't think universities are providing more value than they used to. In fact, I feel like they're predicting a lot less. I mean, it used to be you'd earn $1 million more in your life if you went to college on average. Now, it's like $250,000 more, and yet you're paying like 10 times more to get a college education now. So the numbers are skewed.
Well, changing gears just a little bit here, you do career videos where you encourage, you have young people send in questions and you answer them. And I know that one of the ones you talked about was about building a mentor base and trying to find people who can help guide you through your career, people who have already been very successful in their chosen fields. But given that the landscape has changed pretty vastly over the last 10, 20, 30 years, is there still value in the ideas and guidance of people who had to go through it at a different way, went through it at a different time when they got into the job market versus now where things are vastly different than what they were in the past?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yes and no is the answer. I mean, you're never going to get away from good fundamental principles: hard work, reliability, treating people well, presenting yourself well, always having an eye on education and furthering your own skills. So I think that's, you can never have too many of that kind of good advice. I think obviously the economy now is much more technology based. You need people with a higher average skill set in order to get jobs in America, because tertiary sector work, blue collar type of work, work with your hands is now done outside the United States. It's done in the third world, manufacturing, textiles, food production to a large extent. And I think, so young people, if you're going to work in the United States and live in the United States and justify the higher, median salaries you're getting relative to the rest of the world, you're going to have to perform at a more optimum level. So, you're going to have to keep developing your skills, and you have to take your career really seriously. It's not just going to be a case of, hey, I need a job today, I'll have one by the end of the afternoon. In order to get a job, it's very difficult, and you've got to be a competitive candidate.
So you mentioned the idea of outsourcing. For companies, a lot of times they're focused on their bottom line, trying to maximize profits. Do they have a responsibility to try and bring young professionals into their workforce as well?
I think for any company that's going to survive in the long term, you've got to have a talent pipeline, and you've got to have young people that are going to come into your organization with a lot of passion, enthusiasm, and strong work ethic and strong capacity for a large amount of work, and they're going to grow within your company and do well. And I think that's common sense. I think there's obviously a skills gap in the United States, which has been well documented, where companies are struggling to find the skills they need within the country, even in this vast pool of unemployment that exists. And that's a total mismatch between the skills employers need and the skills they're being taught in the education system. And so the solution for a lot of employers is to say, hey, let's hire foreign nationals, bring them into the country, have them come and work for us, or let's outsource our operations outside of the United States, where we can hire people who have the skills we need, and oftentimes at a lower rate. So the American worker has got to be much more skilled in what they need, what employers need them to do, rather than what they've always been taught.
So what can young professionals do to influence some of these policy decisions? What is their responsibility? What is their role in trying to help mitigate it, knowing that they're also still searching for jobs, knowing that there are these external challenges? If we're trying to build this generation of really well-versed workers that are going to be the next group to be responsible for the economy, what can they do to try and take steps forward as they begin their careers?
I think it's an excellent question, and I think the fundamental bottom line answer is place accountability on the education system to make sure that your education is leading you directly into a successful career. As you graduate on a Friday, you're in work on a Monday, you're perfectly qualified for the job you're doing, and there's not all this complete mismatch of, oh, well, I've left university now, now what? Now do I need to spend 5 years sort of finding myself and looking around, and where do I work, and how do I build a network, and all this sort of stuff. It should all have been done during your formative years at school. You should know every employer in your area. You should know the big ones, the small ones, the ones that are growing, the ones that are declining. You should know everything you need to know about a career on the day you graduate, is my opinion. And I think we're still just getting bogged down with, we keep spending more and more money to try and get that outcome, when really we need to stop spending as a young demographic, as a millennial generation, put the emphasis back on the universities to say, unless you're giving us this product that we need, which is full career preparedness on graduation day, you're not getting paid. So rather than all this money up front to the education system, let's hold the money back, let's get the education we need, then we'll pay the education system on outcomes. It's almost like profit participation. The more successful I am in my career, the more money you as the education system are going to get from me, rather than all the money up front guaranteed. If you go bankrupt in America, your student loans don't count against bankruptcy.
Absolutely.
How fraudulent is that? So they're the kind of fundamental changes we need to make as a country and as a demographic. And hopefully with the general election this year, this issue will be a major issue, and that's something I hope it will be. That's why I wrote my book.
Well, coming back to you, what do you see as DPAF's role in all of this, and what are some actionable things that you're most proud of in terms of steps you've been able to accomplish since you've started the organization?
Well, we're a nonprofit group promoting careers. We hold seminars, we hold policy roundtables, we do interview training for young people. We raise awareness about this issue of career preparedness, and we try and bring media, and we try and bring business involvement into this sphere and get better career guidance and preparedness for young people. We're also like an umbrella company for local advocacy groups that are specifically focused on things like internships, things like manufacturing jobs, things like interview training or resume training, or being an auxiliary assistant for careers departments at education institutions, which I find are generally not as powerful as they should be within any educational environment, and to try and raise their profile and point out to young people the importance of the careers department and how it should be central to any educational institution.
Well, you mentioned your book, We the Future, the future of American careers in a post-recession era. Can you talk a little bit about the book and what your motivation was to write it?
Yeah, I mean, the book is really about my, my experiences in careers and the things I've learned about the youth career system in the United States, from education through to career, and the types of challenges that young people face and the kind of solutions that they need to undertake in order to overcome all these, hugely burdensome challenges. I mean, there's the macro challenges of national debt, of the baby boomer retirees and how they need to be supported, and the lack of economic growth and the competitive threats to America. There's also the micro issues about how does the young person best prepare themselves and source opportunity, find opportunity, and build a career, because it's not like their mum and dad's generation anymore. It's a totally different world. You're competing against, instead of competing against workers in your town and city that you're living in, you're competing with workers all over the world. And you've got to be on your game in order to grow and to thrive and to have success and to build a great life for you and your family. And it's right now there's a ton of great opportunity with terms of all the technological power you have in your phone or your personal computer. But then on the other hand, there's a lot of economic challenges that exist and that are going to continue for the foreseeable future.
So it sounds like you cover a wide depth of topics in the book. Who would you say are the people that would benefit most from reading it?
I think a lot of people would benefit. I think young people first and foremost would benefit. I think parents of those young people would benefit if they've got college-age kids. They're thinking about, hey, how do I get my son or daughter out of my basement and into their home of their own, into a career of their own, a life of their own, and what advice can I give them as a parent, recognizing that the working world is different to what they were used to. So I think there's a lot of great advice for parents. University careers advisors, I think, could get a lot out of this. And anyone that works in a field where they're helping young people, or a business where they're trying to hire young people, and they need to try and get inside the mindset of, what are the fears and concerns and issues young people are facing, and how can I alleviate those and get the best youth talent for my organization.
So you had a pretty unique opportunity with this book where you narrated your own work as an audiobook for people who listen better than they read. Did you learn anything going back and reading through your own copy that maybe you picked out from the second time around?
Well, I learned that, I lose, I need a lot of water to talk as often as I do. I'm not as big a talker for most of the time as I am when I'm doing the audiobook. But it was definitely a fun experience. It's great that, it's out there on Amazon and iBooks and Audible and all that. And so, I hope people read it. I hope they get a lot from it. And I hope that, we can make a difference in this youth career issue in the United States.
So Amazon, that's where people can go to get it?
Go to Amazon, you find it there.
Okay, well, David, thank you so much for taking some time to chat about the state of youth careers. Thank you all for watching. Brian Sabby, signing off.